Welcome you all to Trek Wars. Alright, so today on Trek Wars, we're going to be taking a look at the Klingon Empire, which is one of the superpowers in the Star Trek universe. We're going to learn a couple of things. We're going to learn about how many ships they have. We're going to learn about how old their ships are, how advanced their ships are, and the numbers and the reasons that their empire and their ships' mechanics look the way that they do. And with that being said, let's learn how large the Klingon Empire actually is. Now, there were a couple of notable things about the Klingon Empire that we should all be aware of before we learn about the ships and the numbers and how stats. And that's like, what kind of ships are we going to be looking at? Where's our sources? Well, we're going to use VASA to understand how many ships we actually have, but we're going to use canon starships and as well as legal starships. So things from like Legacy and Star Trek Online that have a legal basis, which makes them into canon starships. So we'll keep the Klingon Empire in VASA with only its corresponding starships. All right, so some of the things you're going to notice, though, is that the names and the way the ships look in VASA are going to be slightly off depending on the ship. And we're going to go ahead and go with what is canon instead of what is in VASA, but we'll use their numbers. And we're going to use the D-21 as an example, also known as the Camarag. So this is a ship from Star Trek Online, and obviously it looks different than what VASA has. And with that being said, let's get started. So the very first thing that I noticed about the Klingon Empire is they use Vorchas, they have Katangas occasionally, and birds of prey everywhere. That is their go-to starship. So the bird of prey is the main defense of the Klingon Empire. Now, there are lots of different versions of the bird of prey. There are big, giant birds of prey, 600 meters. There are small birds of prey. And we're going to learn about all the different birds of prey and where they orientate inside the Klingon Empire. All right, so first is the most common ship in the fleet, the K-22 Burrell, bird of prey. There are 1,154 old variants of the ship in the Klingon Empire, and there are new 1,485,000 of these ships. These ships do have modern weapons, and they do use modern torpedoes, and are relatively strong ships for their size. Their shielding is mid-level. Their hull strength is relatively low due to their size, but they make up for this in numbers. All right, next on our list is the D-32 Strongbird. It's a larger variant of the bird of prey. There are 710 in the Klingon Fleet. 45 of them are partially upgraded, and 356 have been upgraded to full standards. The Klingon bird of prey, the D-32, is part of the Klingon Reserve Fleet, and this means the ship is being reserved to protect Klingon home space during the Dominion War. They didn't really see too much action actually during the Dominion War, but they were left as reserve fleet to protect Klingon space if the Klingon Empire loses its fleet. Next on our list is the L-42 bird of prey, which is classified as a frigate. It's the largest variant so far. There are 271 old versions of this starship, and there are 266 modern versions. Now, it is noted that these ships took significant damage and losses during the Dominion War. These new variants of this starship, their weaponry is the same as the previous variants, maybe slightly stronger, but not enough to really make a difference. Where this ship stands out is it has very powerful shielding. Their shielding is some of the newer shielding, which would have been seen on the Vorcha-class cruisers. These ships are very powerful and would have been able to take a lot of damage before going down. Next on the list is the D-12. Now, the D-12 is classified as a battle cruiser. These ships are very large. These are the largest variants of the bird of prey. There are 377 mid-level Kavort class birds of prey, and there are 573 new variants. Now, this ship is slightly odd and different than some of the other variants. Some of the older variants of this ship are actually technologically more advanced than their newer counterparts. They had very powerful weapons, very powerful shields. The newer variants still carried very powerful weapons, but for some reason they were given a much cheaper and cost-effective shielding, which turned them into light cruisers. So they would be operating as a heavy cruiser or a light cruiser depending on the time period it was created, and it's really honestly a flip-flop of the previous Birds of Prey, where the older ships are much weaker and the newer ships, or the older ships, are a little stronger. They're around the 2350s. These ships were designed to hunt down and destroy Excelsior class starships, as well as go toe to toe with Ambassador class Federation starships. All right, so we're taking a look at the numbers of ships and the classes of ships and their size. We have the D-12, the K-22s, which are the Burrells, the L-47s, D-32s. So you can see that the Klingon Empire has a huge variety of birds of prey, and they become a very, very popular design. And also, a lot of these ships have actually been sold to minor powers, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get further in the video. So the bird of prey, there are 4,836 of these ships. There are 2,680 are new and standard and ready for combat. There are 422 which are moderately upgraded, so they either have upgraded shielding or upgraded weapons, but not both. And then there are old variants which don't have either, and there's 1,154. So right off the bat, you can see that the bird of prey is a very vital, very important aspect of the Klingon Empire's military. It is honestly the backbone of their entire military is built around these fast, nimble warships. Alright, so reviewing the Klingon Empire, they're very different than the Federation. They use money. We know the Federation doesn't. So the Klingon Empire, from a galactic standpoint, is very important, especially from an economic standpoint, because the Klingon Empire is very wealthy. They have a lot of houses with a lot of money, and number one, they're arms dealers. They sell warships to other minor races. They sell ships to other minor houses. To make it very clear, make it real simple, the Klingon Empire are basically arm dealers, and they sell older ships that are outdated to minor races. We see them sell birds of prey, K-Vorts to Ferengi, for an example. So with that in mind, we got to remember that the ships that we're going to see in the fleet are also reflecting the fact that this ship, they buy and sell ships on the galactic market. So one of the things about the Klingon Empire and its galactic market is it likes to sell a lot of its outdated and older ships to minor powers or minor houses. So the Klingon Empire keeps a large reserve of old antique starships, not only for defense, but to sell. With that being said, we're going to take a look at some of these old relics of the Klingon Empire. So we'll be taking a look at an older destroyer, which is the Stinger or the D-14. The Klingon Empire still has 183 of these starships. They used to have 377, but a vast majority of them have been sold to other empires like the Nausicaans. This ship is used during the Dominion War, and it took significant losses. Alright, so this is a very old cruiser, and it is the D4. This is the predecessor to the D7. There are 277 of these ships left in the Klingon Empire. This ship was also sold to minor houses and minor races. They are only kept as a reserve fleet for the Klingon Empire. They are very weak and are basically cannon fodder. Next on the list are the Strong Victory class, K-32 class. These ships are very old. There are 571 of them. They carry no torpedoes and only disruptors. They're very low caliber. These ships did fight in the Dominion War. They took enormous amounts of casualties. A large portion of these ships were also sold to minor houses and minor races. So the K-17 Deathstalker is a very small scout ship, carries no torpedoes and only disruptors, and has 132 of these ships in the Klingon arsenal. They are nothing more than just scout ships, and a few of them have been sold to minor powers. This ship is very unremarkable and is cannon fodder. So next on the list is the D5. It is a frigate. So the D5L is a logistics starship. It used to be a cruiser when it was originally built. There are 450 of them. They were designated as just cargo ships By the time of the Dominion War, the Klingon Empire did not upgrade any of these ships, and they deemed it not necessary, and that these ships were pretty much only bringing cargo, supplies, and possibly troops. They're not very large. There's really very few weapons aboard these ships. They're very unremarkable, except for the fact that they are absolutely essential to the Klingon infrastructure. So this is their transport. This is one of their main transports that's capable of defending itself. Think of this thing as like the Klingon Empire's version of the Miranda. Next on our list is a Deep Space Explorer, the Seeker. So this is the Constitution class of the Klingon Empire. So the D9 is also referred to as a D14. There are 110 of these ships. As an old ship, it's still relevant and can fight. It's similar in strength and value is around the same as a Federation Constellation class starship. It may not be the most powerful ship, but it has enough weaponry still from back in the day. It can still hold its own in a fight. So next on our list is the L-24 Always Victorious. This is an old battleship that has been retrofitted and brought up to modern standards. The ship is a long-range torpedo artillery ship and is very powerful. These ships were upgraded around the 2350s. They have pretty modern weapons, and these ships did really well during the Dominion War. Only a few were lost. These ships are really good at launching long-range torpedo barrages from the back lines. And once ships got close enough to them, they were strong enough to defend themselves. To give you a direct comparison, these ships are about twice the strength of an Excelsior-class starship. Next on our list is the D-21, which is the Camarag. This ship is seen on Star Trek Online. There are 155 moderately upgraded variants of this ship, and 117 have been upgraded to modern standards. This ship is relatively strong. It's got shielding, which would be around the same as the Vorcha class. Its weaponry is pretty similar. Its only lacking is its hull strength is about half that of the Vorcha class. But overall, this is a very powerful ship. Many of the great houses and minor houses were building these ships, and they were very vital and very important to the front lines of the Dominion War. One of the notable things about this ship is this ship was upgraded right before the Dominion War. So the Klingon Empire was aware that they were going to be going to war with the Dominion after they attacked the Cardassians. These ships went in full production and were being upgraded as quickly as possible. These ships were built with the possibility of being upgraded, and the Klingons took full advantage of that process. So next on the list is the D2, or the Ravenous, really popular ship, Star Trek lore. Very old, torpedo destroyer. Didn't really perform super great. A lot of them were destroyed during the Dominion War. There were 300 of these ships. They were not modernized. They were just older ships, and they took significant losses during the Dominion War. Now, the one good thing about this small and older ship is it did have 4 torpedo launchers, so it was capable of bringing somewhat of a torpedo spread to the battlefield, and that is its really only saving grace. Its shielding is moderate, its hull strength is low, and its secondary weapons are subpar. Alright, so next on the list is the famous Vorcha class. This is an attack cruiser. It's a D-90. There were 104 of these ships. Really important to the Klingon Empire. Strong hulls, really powerful shields, lots of torpedoes, lots of disruptors. Similar in stats to a Galaxy class, and 104 of these ships is very impressive. The only thing this ship lacks compared to Galaxy classes and other ships of the other empires is its subsystems are subpar, all kind of class 2 technology. Sensors aren't really that particularly that great. Targeting computers are okay, but I mean, this ship was just absolutely armed to the teeth. Very important to the front line. The most important front line cruiser is this ship. Okay, so next on the list is the L-39. These are the Blood Slayers. There are only 11 of these ships that had survived. Almost all of them were decommissioned. Right as the Dominion War was about to start, they actually upgraded the 11 that still existed. They were modernized with new shielding, and they had new disruptors. They were good ships. They weren't fantastic, but they were definitely good. Very few of these ships were lost during the Dominion War. They pretty much were defending stations rather than actually engaging targets. They were more of a defensive command ship for some of the minor houses. So next on the list is obviously the Nigvar. This is Gowron's flagship. This is the L-70. There are only 8 of these ships. Only the most important houses and the most trustworthy persons to the Gowron's house would be using these ships. And they were, in my opinion, were probably not in the front lines or in engagements, and were probably defending key sectors like shipyards and things of that nature. I don't even think, if I remember right, that these ships were ever actually in the Dominion War, except for the beginning stages where Gowron's ship was attacking Cardassians. But besides that, these ships were just really powerful, and they didn't participate that much in the war. Now, one of the most common ships seen in the Klingon Empire is the Katanga and the D7. There are 1,244 of these old ships still remaining in the Klingon Empire's forces. There are 65 of these ships that had partial upgrades, giving them newer weapons, but for the most part, these ships were cannon fodder. There were a few of them that were upgraded with lance phasers, but they didn't really do much in the actual Klingon War. They were more fodder and basically transporting troops. So one of the things that you will probably ask yourself is, why is the Klingon Empire fielding so many weak, old era starships? They're Kirk generation. The reason for that, it's more of a ritual reason. They feel these ships should die in honor, and so they keep them longer than they should. This is more of a spiritual reason than an economic reason. Now we'll take a look at the Klingon Empire. It has 112 battleships, 988 cruisers. It has 422 partially upgraded starships and 414 large battleships altogether. So altogether, there's 4,869 outdated Kirk-era starships, 422 partially upgraded starships, and 2,893 modern warships, giving a grand total of 8,184 ships for the Klingon Empire. Alright, so at one point during Deep Space Nine, we know that the Klingon Empire had 1,500 ships left, and they were fighting against the Dominion on their own by themselves, and it was a battle that was a 3-1 on the side of the Dominion. So this tells us that the Klingon Empire either lost thousands and thousands of ships, and if that was the case, the Klingon Empire only had 18.75% of its fleet left after the Dominion War. Or what I think is a more appropriate response is that the fighting ships or new ships, that they had lost 51.84% of their modern warships. So if they had 1,500 ships and they lost 51% of their modern ships, that would leave them with 1,500. So based off my calculations of having 2,893 modern warships, I think the leftover 1,500 were the ships that they were using to attack the Dominion, and it was a separate force from their reserve forces, which were protecting the Klingon home systems. This is the fleet size of the Klingon Empire. Now let's compare them to some of the other empires like the Romulans. So the Romulans have only 3,501 ships. They have 1,423 fighting capable starships. So the Klingon Empire has almost double fighting capacity of actually modern warships. Now, when we compare them to the Federation, they are similar in numbers, but the Federation dwarfs them in strength of starships. So the Klingon Empire's modern fleet is only a portion the strength of the Federation. So most Federation starships are 2 to 3 times stronger than their counterparts of the Klingon Empire. So when I do an evaluation of this, could the Klingon Empire defeat the Federation on a one-to-one basis? Absolutely not. The Federation would stomp them. Now, if they were to go against the Romulan Star Empire in an all-out battle, they could overwhelm them with numbers. So if the Klingon Empire and the Romulan Star Empire went head-to-head, for every modern starship each race had, the Klingon Empire would have 7 additional old support craft. They would be able to beat them by attrition alone. Do you agree with my analysis of the Klingon Empire? Is there anything that I missed? If there's anything that you think I missed or anything I got wrong, please put them in the comments and let's have a discussion about it. Thank you for watching Trek Wars. If you like this material, please subscribe and make a comment. And with that being said, victory is life.